Welcome to Lesson 6 of the Basics of Ancient Ugaritic. In this lesson, we'll be looking at the form and function of pronouns in Ugaritic. Pronouns are grammatical elements that represent nouns. In Ugaritic, the pronouns will have the same number and gender as the nouns they are representing. This feature helps us keep track of what the pronouns are referring to. Remember that Ugaritic nouns can be masculine or feminine in gender, and singular, plural, or dual in number. That means that Ugaritic pronouns may also be masculine or feminine in gender, and singular, plural, or dual in number. Pronouns are also the first part of speech we've encountered in our study so far that may also have the grammatical category of person. When they do, they're called, appropriately, personal pronouns. When we say first person, we mean I, me, or my for the singular, and we, our, or us for the plural or dual. Second person implies you, masculine or feminine, singular, dual, or plural. Third person implies he, she, him, or it, her, his, hers, or its for the singular, and they, their, or them for the dual or plural. Also, Ugaritic pronouns can occur as independent words, as in English, but they can also appear as suffixes on nouns, verbs, and other parts of speech. We'll break all of this down into bite-sized pieces in this lesson. Let's begin by looking at singular independent personal pronouns. We begin with the first person singular independent personal pronoun. Remember, because these pronouns are independent, they stand alone as individual words. As in English, the Ugaritic first person singular independent personal pronoun means I, and again, like English, it has no features that differentiate a masculine or a feminine I. It has two forms in Ugaritic, and there's no difference in meaning between them. There is the shorter form, ana, and the longer form, anaku. Let's look at two example sentences. Notice that in the first sentence, one form of the pronoun comes before the verb. In the second sentence, the pronoun comes after the verb. You can see that the position of these pronouns with respect to the verb is somewhat loose. In the translations of these sentences, both forms of the pronoun simply mean I. I have walked, and I will sit down. The second person singular masculine independent personal pronoun always has the form ata, as in ata ayumaru, meaning you, masculine singular, are ayumaru. The second person singular feminine independent personal pronoun looks very similar to the masculine one. You can see that only the last vowel is different. This is what will differentiate the two forms. It always has the form ati, as in tsi ati amatu yarech, translated as go out, you slave of Yarech. The English translation gives us no clue what gender or number the you is, but this is very clear in Ugaritic. The third person singular masculine independent personal pronoun is hua, as in hua yavilu argamanaka, translated as he must bring your tribute. The third person singular feminine independent personal pronoun also begins with an H and ends with an A, but has a different internal vowel and consonant. It's pronounced hiya, as in mahayu hiya, meaning she arrived. You have just seen all the singular independent personal pronouns in the entire language. You should learn these as separate vocabulary words. In the next lesson, you'll learn that verbs in Ugaritic have a pronoun included in their form, so verbs don't need to use these independent personal pronouns. So when you do see verbs used with these pronouns, some sort of emphasis is being made. Learning these pronouns will help you to recognize that emphasis, in addition to enabling you to keep track of who is doing what in the text. Unfortunately, the situation for the plural independent personal pronouns is not nearly as clear. Let's look at those next. The first person plural independent personal pronoun, we in English, is unattested. and the situation for the second person plural masculine independent personal pronoun is not much better. From other Semitic languages, we can speculate that its form would be atum, but it is not attested in Ugaritic texts with any certainty. The second person plural feminine independent personal pronoun is unattested. The third person masculine plural independent personal pronoun corresponds to the pronoun they in English, and would probably be hum in Ugaritic, but it is not attested with any certainty. The situation is the same for the third person feminine plural independent personal pronoun. It would probably be hinna in Ugaritic. Thankfully, the situation is better for the dual independent personal pronouns. First, we'll look at the second person masculine or feminine dual. This form looks like what the theorized second masculine plural independent personal pronoun would look like, with the addition of a long A at the end. Remember how the long A was characteristic of dual nouns? We'll find it here again. This is just one example of many that you'll encounter where learning one grammatical feature of the language will make learning a related grammatical feature so much easier. So if you learned the form of dual nouns, you would expect that a similar ending on a pronoun would also indicate dual, and it does. Now let's look at a sentence where we find this dual pronoun. Atuma bashatuma. The second person dual independent personal pronoun is in blue. We would translate this sentence as you delayed. We can see in Ugaritic that the you is dual, that two people are the subject of the action, even though that information is obscured in English. The third person dual independent personal pronoun again looks like what the theorized third masculine plural independent personal pronoun would look like with the addition of the long A at the end. That is characteristic of dual forms of all kinds. In the example, you can see the dual pronoun at the end in blue. Notice how the placement of the pronoun differs from its placement in the sentence above it. This demonstrates once again that the placement of the pronoun with respect to the verb varies in Ugaritic. There's no hard and fast rule. This is perhaps a little looser than what you may have learned in other languages. The translation of this sentence would be, they drew near. In English, it is impossible, apart from some artificial means like the brackets I've included in the translation, to indicate that the word they stands for two people. But in Ugaritic, it is very clear by means of its different form. Up until now, we've been talking about independent personal pronouns. Now let's look at what personal pronouns look like when they appear as suffixes on nouns and verbs. You can see that there are three forms for the first person singular suffix pronoun that we would translate in English as me or my. There are three forms for three different situations. In the first example, the long I is used after a noun in the nominative case. Here the noun is the subject of the sentence, my life was absent. The long I has taken the place of the normal U case ending of the noun in the nominative case. The second sentence shows the form of the first person singular pronoun suffix for nouns in the genitive/dative or accusative case. For these nouns, the suffix is ya, attached directly to the noun after its appropriate case ending. In the example, the noun son is in the genitive/dative case because it is preceded by the proclitic preposition le. So the first person singular pronoun suffix is ya, le bini ya, to my son. Notice again how the suffix attaches to the noun after the noun's case ending. In this case, the case ending is the genitive/dative I, caused by the proclitic preposition le. The third sentence shows that the form of the first person singular pronoun suffix on verbs, where the suffix pronoun is the direct object of the verb, is ni. Yikra'uni means he calls me, and here the pronoun me is suffixed directly to the verb yikra'u. The second masculine singular pronoun suffix is ka, as in abduka, your servant. It attaches to the noun after the noun's case ending. The second feminine singular pronoun suffix looks similar to the second masculine singular suffix, but with a final I instead of an A. So, tahumu abiki means the message of your father. And we can tell that the word your is representing a female. The third person singular masculine and feminine pronoun suffixes also look similar, differing only in their last vowel. The masculine has a short U and the feminine has a short A. So for the masculine example, muzlalu, benihu, we translate the shelter of his son. And for the feminine example, we have bipiha and translate from her mouth. You no doubt noticed that except for the first person, these singular pronoun suffixes have only one form. That makes them a lot easier to learn than those parts of speech that inflect for case. But give these pronouns just as much attention. Knowing them will help you immensely in navigating around the texts. The independent personal pronouns had singular, plural, and dual forms, and so do the suffixed pronouns. We've just looked at the singular forms. Now let's consider the other two categories, plural and dual, beginning with the plural. The first person plural, masculine or feminine pronoun suffix is nu, as in Malkunu Balu, our king is Baal. Notice that just as with the singular pronoun suffixes, the plural suffixes attach to the noun after the appropriate case ending. In this case, king is in the nominative case, and so ends with u, Malku. The pronoun suffix attaches directly to the end of this form, Malku nu, our king. The second person masculine plural pronoun suffix is kum, as in Balikum, your lord. The second person feminine plural pronoun suffix is not attested with certainty, but would probably have the form kinna if it did. Notice that the second person singular pronoun suffixes began with k, and so do the second person plural pronoun suffixes. That's a little trick for keeping these forms straight in your mind. If you see that the suffix begins with a k, then think second person. The third person masculine plural pronoun suffix is hum, as in the sentence tahliyu rashatihum. They lower their heads. The feminine form is hinna, as in sahurata hinna, their youngest one, which would be a daughter because of the feminine form. Notice that the third person singular pronoun suffixes began with h, and so do the third person plural pronoun suffixes. That's another trick for keeping these suffixes straight. If you see that the suffix begins with an h, then think third person. Finally, let's look at the dual pronoun suffixes. The first person masculine or feminine dual pronoun suffix is naya. Notice the characteristic long a ending of the dual. In the example, imanaya, with us, you can see that the pronoun suffixes can attach to prepositions in addition to nouns and verbs. The second person masculine or feminine dual pronoun suffix is kuma. Again, notice the long a ending. Also, as is the case with all second person suffixes, it begins with a k. In the example, we see the suffix attached to a verb as its direct object. Yadubukuma ka imari. He will make you, that is the two of you, like a lamb. The third person masculine or feminine dual pronoun suffix is huma. Once again, you see the long a ending. You can also see that it begins with an h, just as all third person pronoun suffixes do. In the example, it is attached to the noun names. Wa yeparu shumatehuma. He proclaims their names, and the number of people indicated by the word their is 2. We've completed our survey of personal pronouns, and hopefully you've noticed a few patterns, such as the fact that K is the characteristic first letter of second-person pronouns, and that H is the characteristic first letter of third-person pronouns, both independent and suffixed. Also, a long A ending usually signals a dual form. The term personal pronoun indicates that the pronoun has first, second, and third-person forms. But there are other pronouns in Ugaritic, as in most languages, that do not have such inflections. Let's take some time to consider these other non-personal pronouns. The first of these is the relative pronoun. This is a pronoun that introduces a clause by using the words who, which, or that. For example, in English, if I say, I remembered the pronouns that we studied, notice how the clause we studied is introduced by the relative pronoun that. That we studied describes the pronouns. In Ugaritic, the relative pronoun has masculine and feminine forms that are singular or plural and also inflected for case. The masculine singular relative pronoun has three forms, one for each case. Do for the nominative, D for the genitive/dative, and da for the accusative. Let's look at an example using the accusative form da. Tinu da taku. The first word is the command give. The last word is a verb meaning you harbor. In this sentence, then, the relative pronoun is the direct object introducing the adjectival clause you harbor. People are being commanded to hand over someone they are harboring. So we would translate the relative pronoun in this sentence as, give the one whom you harbor. The feminine singular relative pronoun also has three forms corresponding to its three cases. Datu for the nominative, dati for the genitive/dative, and data for the accusative. Once again, let's look at an example using the accusative form data. Bahataya banetu data kasbi. The first two words mean, I have built my house, and the last word means, of silver. In this sentence, the relative pronoun data is introducing a descriptive clause that is modifying my house. Since my house is the direct object of the verb, it is in the accusative case. Because the relative pronoun is referring to this noun in the accusative case, it is in the accusative case as well. And we should translate it in this sentence as, which is. I have built my house, which is of silver. The plural form of the relative pronoun does not differentiate between masculine and feminine, so it's classified as common. It has two forms, one for the nominative case, due to, and one for all other cases, duty. Let's look at an example using the form duty. Benashima duty ithe alpuma. The first word means with men. The last two words mean there are oxen. So the relative pronoun is introducing the words there are oxen in an adjectival clause modifying men. So we'll translate it as with whom. With men, with whom there are oxen. Now we're going to consider a kind of pronoun called a demonstrative pronoun. This term might be unfamiliar to you, but its meaning is really quite simple. A demonstrative pronoun is one that a person is expected to demonstrate. That's where its name comes from. For example, when I say, this book, people expect me to demonstrate which book I mean, often by pointing at it. A near demonstrative means I'm pointing to something near. A far demonstrative means I'm pointing to something farther away. Ugaritic has only the near demonstrative, this, clearly attested. And its form is hanadu. For example, the phrase sipru hanadu means this document, a document that is relatively near to the speaker. We've already considered the relative pronoun. It resumes reference to some previous noun in the sentence and tells us something about it. But what if there is no previous noun to refer to? In those cases, Ugaritic uses something called the general relative pronoun. Its basic form is manuma and can refer to people or things. When referring to people, it can mean whoever or whichever, as in the example, manuma sha'iluma, whichever inquirers. When referring to things, it means whatever, as in the example, manuma rigmu, whatever matter. It can also have the pronoun suffixes you just learned. To attach the second masculine singular pronoun suffix, for example, you drop the ma from the end and then add the suffix to get manuka, which we'd translate as whoever you are. For the second masculine plural suffix, we do the same thing. Drop the ma from the end and add kum to get manukum, whoever you all are. The last pronouns we have to consider are the interrogative pronouns. These pronouns are simply words that introduce questions, such as which or who or what. Let's see what these forms look like in Ugaritic. For the question which, Ugaritic has a separate form for whether we are asking about a person or a thing. If the question is about a person, then the form is manu, as in manu ebu, which enemy. If the question is about a thing, then the form is minu, as in minu yarhu, which month. The question who is mia, as in mia bi'ilima, that we would translate as who among the gods. And the question what is maha, as in maha yakahu, translated as what does he get. It may take you a while to learn and begin to feel comfortable with these pronouns, especially the many personal pronouns, both the independent forms and the suffixed forms. But it is absolutely critical that you do. There are helps for you within the Ugaritic sentence itself. For example, if the subject of the sentence is third person plural they, then we'd expect pronoun suffixes also to be third person plural their. We can also find agreement between pronouns and the forms of the verbs we're going to be learning in the next lesson. For now, let's do the first sentence of the exercises together so that you can get a good start on working with pronouns. Some words have already been provided for you. The hybrid Ugaritic English sentence is ANK made him KIMR BPY. Let's look at each one of these words individually. The first word is ANK. This is the very first pronoun you encountered in this lesson. Do you recognize it? It's the first common singular independent personal pronoun. ANK is how it appears in transliterated texts. Its full spelling is anaku, and it means I. So we can begin filling in the blanks of our translation. Anaku made him, or I made him. At the beginning of the next word we have to consider, we encounter the letter K. There is a reason why you should consider the possibility that this is a proclitic preposition. In Ugaritic, as in all Semitic languages, words are usually built around a three-consonant root. And we see three consonants already in this word, apart from the initial K. We see an I, which represents a form of the aleph, and we see an M and an R. So we should suspect that the root word is aleph MR, and the K is a proclitic preposition. This preposition is vocalized as ka and means like. This would fit nicely into our translation. So let's add this to both our English and Ugaritic working sentences at the bottom of the page. Anaku made him ka, or I made him like. The next word is the one we concluded had the root letters aleph MR. If I look this up in the vocabulary list on page 111 at the back of the book, I find the vocalization for the nominative case as imaru, meaning lamb. But in this sentence, the word cannot be in the nominative case. We've just seen that it follows the proclitic preposition ka. Words that follow prepositions have to be in the genitive/dative case. So we need to change the case ending of this word from you for nominative to I for genitive/dative. Then we're ready to add it to our sentences at the bottom of the page. Anaku made him ka imari, or I made him like a lamb. All we have left to deal with is the last word. Because it is 3 consonants, you might be tempted to think that the root is BPY, but you won't find that word in the vocabulary list at the end of the book. Another option, therefore, would be that the B is another proclitic preposition, which you learned is vocalized as be. One of its possible meanings that would fit in this sentence is in. Anaku made him ka imari be, or I made him like a lamb in. So what do we do with the PY that is left? You won't find PY in the vocabulary list, but you do find P, meaning mouth, vocalized in the nominative as poo. Here, however, it has a proclitic preposition attached to it, so we'll have to change the ending to I with a circumflex. Then we can add it to our Ugaritic sentence below. Now what do we do with the leftover Y? In this lesson, we learned that Y is a form of one of the pronoun suffixes, specifically the first common singular suffix, when the noun is some other case than the nominative. That would certainly work in this context. The Y should be vocalized as ya, meaning my. That's a meaning we would expect in a sentence that begins with the first common singular pronoun I. So now we can complete the sentences below. Anaku made him ka imari bipiya, or I made him like a lamb in my mouth. You've no doubt noticed that we're dealing with sentences that are getting increasingly complex. Although you've learned a number of grammatical features separately, they never appear that way, of course, in the actual language. You'll find pronouns frolicking with nouns and adjectives and prepositions and all sorts of other parts of speech. Only by regular practice will you be able to begin to see how all of these things work together harmoniously in Ugaritic sentences. So please take the time to work through these remaining exercises for this lesson, and ask yourself questions as you go through each sentence. Make sure you have incorporated pronouns into your toolbox before you move on to the next lesson, where we'll consider one of the most important grammatical features of any language, verbs. I'll look forward to seeing you again then.